So, hi, Paul.
Hi, Debbie. How are you today?
Oh, brilliant. Really good. Um, so thank you for your time today. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation because we are learning so much. That's what we figured out this morning, right? We are learning so much while we are sharing this information. So, yeah, today's talk is about self-awareness, Paul.
Mm.
And we always start off with a definition. So I know what my definition is, but why don't you share yours?
What is my definition of self-awareness? Well, it's the awareness that I'm also learning what self-awareness is and other things that we encounter on a daily basis. So it's understanding your own thoughts, feelings, behaviors, as well as the impacts on oneself and others.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I made a note. It's paying attention to how you think and how you feel and how you behave, that you have a conscious knowledge of yourself, conscious knowledge of oneself. And I think it's a never-ending journey. Keep continuing to learn more about ourselves, at least if we are involved in personal development like we are. So let's talk about who this is important for. I mean, why should you even be self-aware? You know, who needs to know self-awareness? Why is this a thing?
Well, I'm thinking about this morning in a mastermind group chat. And, we had this topic set for today. And what blew me away was the self-awareness within the group. And you use the metaphor of the layers of the onion.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just fascinating that, like, it's a journey. It's an ongoing journey, like you said. It's like we keep learning. So often when this word comes up for me, it's like, yeah, I know that there are times that I'm very self-aware and at times that I'm a complete idiot. Maybe that's self-awareness as well. But the interesting thing is through self-awareness, you can turn up more you. I know that sounds trite, but we were listening to some people this morning who I was really going, and I mean, I was also turning up by reflection and by mirror, which is another metaphor for self-awareness. Like people were turning up as mirrors for me, and I could see my emotions and feelings and experiences and their stories, their journeys. So, yeah, I mean, it's like one of the things, younger me, sometimes not that much younger, I'm aware that I like pressing buttons, or I'm aware that I like certain kinds of jokes that may not be everybody's cup of tea. I've now, I think I'm learning to leave those jokes off the table because it makes some people uncomfortable. And I had to grow awareness in that category. So the feeling that comes up for me is like, yeah, you self-awareness grows and it's a journey. And we're in this, and I've been on this self-improvement, self-development track for a while now. But it doesn't mean that you are always perfect. I mean, it's like, I think it's Dan Millman who said that there are no geniuses. There's only people who have genius moments, and then the same people can have human moments. We can all be idiots at times.
Yeah, while you were listening, while I was listening to you saying that, I was thinking of that study that, I was telling you about earlier that was published in Harvard Business Review. And it's that they finally discovered that there are two sides to self-awareness, or rather two elements and two types, two broad categories. And the one is the internal self-awareness, where we're paying attention, and that's what we normally think of as being self-aware. We're paying attention to our values, our beliefs, our behaviors, and things like that. So that's the internal self-awareness. But there's also another element which is the external self-awareness, where we are aware of how our actions, our behaviors, our words are affecting someone else. And we actually edit our behavior to be more compatible with that other person. And that bit of self-awareness is actually what leads to becoming a better leader, a better partner. It's how you enrich your connections with other people, because you are aware of how you are showing up for them. So I think that the awareness that there are two types of self-awareness is something that I have learned just recently. And so when I think about who is it important, why are we doing all this stuff? Why is personal development important? Why is self-awareness important? For what reason? For what purpose? And it's actually so that we can live better lives, have better relationships, be better leaders, be better employees, be better business owners, have better connections. The more we understand ourselves, the more we know who we want to spend time with and how we want that time to be spent with them. And the values that we have for ourselves, if they are reflected in the values from someone else. I think the journey to self-awareness is incredibly powerful, incredibly powerful for our success, any person's success, be that life, work, relationships, families. It's I think it's a big deal.
Yeah, it is. I think about, the emotional intelligence is a component of self-awareness. And because if we really peel another layer back and we think about it, self-awareness is almost a word that can trick you, because it's like, it's about self-awareness.
Yeah. So
But a deeper level, it is about other awareness as well. And it's not the self-awareness is not complete with awareness of others. And then the self becomes, by definition, us as a whole. So it's like being aware of others' experiences and not creating the other. So have the awareness of others and their experiences. That's quite like, because we live in a world divided amongst many lines, and we see those lines. We don't have to go there, but we see those lines in the media. And if we were just more aware of ourselves, and aware of others, and we were willing to do that work.
Aware of what triggers us, for example,
Yeah. And what might trigger other people.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Some people do that on purpose, though. Some people trigger.
Yeah, but that's what I was referring to earlier.
I didn't want to say.
No, you can say I'm self-aware enough, because a key part of self-awareness and growth is feedback. I cannot grow without feedback. And, I am all about the hope that I will end up on my last day having at times been the best version of myself. And if I'm not willing to accept feedback, it's like, if I've just thought about it, either I get feedback or I get karma. I think I prefer feedback than karma. Because we know what she is.
That's hilarious. As when you say that feedback or karma, and you think about when is a good time to get self-awareness, it's like when you notice that your morals, maybe, or your ethics, your ethicals part of you, or your morals, when you need to calibrate that with the people that are around you. and the situation you are in.
Mm.
It's
Well, I think, if you take it purely to say, if you take it to work, think about somebody at work. When would you want self-awareness? Say somebody's young and they're starting out at work and they want to impress everybody. That's, as you should start younger, and hopefully more and more kids are being brought up being more self-aware. But then they need self-aware parents. But say from a work environment, I mean, we need the morals, we need the integrity. But, on another level, we also need somebody to know themselves and not burn themselves out, being able to ask for help, understanding when, that stress and being able to identify these stresses is key to self-awareness.
yeah.
Being able to do self-care, the stuff we've spoken about before as well. Having practices in place to reduce stress levels, to deal with self-care. But it takes something like stop, taking a moment and checking in with yourself and like, okay, how am I feeling? What emotions am I experiencing? You say, this is where the connection with mindfulness comes in, because like you practice, you practice to become better. I don't think you can be perfect. Nobody's perfect. I'd love to go, oh, I'm perfect, but I know, it's very seldom you find the perfect person. And then they're a guru, and then I run a mile. It's just, maybe I need to work on that. But more likely I do. But I think it's like being able to, because to practice mindfulness and to practice, say, use a simple example, like not being stressed in your personal life and in your work life and not getting burnt out and looking after your mental health, which are all important things. I mean, we all have dark days. I mean, and I think a lot of people, I mean, if you look at the statistics about the number of increase in mental health issues, say in America, during COVID and after COVID, I mean, it's huge. I mean, they're now even saying, I've read some articles, I think you shared the article with me from a psychology magazine or website, which said that life coaches there's not enough counselors and therapists to look after the number of people who need assistance with mental health. But if you have that awareness that you have a mental health concern, that you are stressed, that you can burn out, then by practicing self-awareness and the practices that go with it, you can improve.
Let's put that into just one sentence. And I'm thinking that if something stirs you up, if something is actually triggering you or something like that, something is reaching an emotion, right? That is where you need to turn on your self-awareness button. Push that button for self-awareness, right? And yeah, like you were saying, mindfulness, how would you do that, right? What skills do you need to develop to be able to be more self-aware, right? So, and that's what you're saying is mindfulness, and meditation is part of that. And, reflecting on, and how do you do reflection best? By keeping a journal.
Well, it's like, do we only need to grow self-awareness of the emotions that are bad? Because what I'm hearing you saying is we can look at the good emotions as well. And I think this is often the thing that we have to journal, because we only, well, how I've interpreted it, you've had a bad day, journal, but the reality is write down this thing. The real trick to journaling is journaling about gratitude. You want to really get to know yourself, write about the things that make you happy as well. The things that make you unhappy, they're very good at telling you about your values. If you're unhappy about seeing somebody kicking a puppy, I know, you see there's an emotional trigger.
Totally.
I mean, of course, if you can, you should kick the person. No, don't go out and kick the person. But the fact is you value puppies and you value kindness and things like that. These are all ways where you learn self-awareness. And if you're the person kicking the puppy, then you need some help, my friend.
You need calibration between your moral and ethics.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like if something reaches you, if something reaches your heart, if something touches you, if something stirs an emotion in you, be that good or bad, happy or sad, that is something that means that you've become self-aware of something. And that's the moment where you just kind of wait for a second and say, oh, wait a minute. I felt angry at that, or, oh, that was really pleasing. That really made me feel grateful for something. I think those are the opportunities that lie in every single moment of the day. And that's where the self-awareness muscle is increased, right? That's what we learned in positive intelligence as well, is this awareness. And I'm thinking that using mindfulness as a tool, meditation as a tool, absolutely. I love to meditate, and that's one of my favorite go-to resources to ground myself as well. And I think it helps us with our self-awareness, but it's not going to help you in that moment when somebody's, let's say somebody runs into your car, they bumps in, one car bumps into your car, fender bender at the grocery store parking lot or something. And you want to just go, oh, I'm in a rush and no, and why did this have to happen to me? And that kind of anger, if in that moment, you don't have time to meditate, I don't think, but you do have time to say, that is making me angry.
Yeah, but you can also choose to respond to that situation. I was thinking about somebody that drove into my parked car. Now, I'm not going to talk about the precognition and knowing something was coming, but my car was parked and I was like, I knew something's coming. And then it's 10 o'clock at night and having dinner, and I heard this massive bang. I was going, oh, somebody's just knocked into my car. And I could have gone downstairs and been very angry. But my first question was, are you okay? Because you can choose, how you want to move. My sister wasn't so, she wasn't so nice about it. You could have smacked her, she would have. But that's how she is. But the thing is, we can choose our responses. It doesn't mean we don't have emotions about them. Doesn't feel like you can't have, because not to feel an emotion would be suppression. And if you're suppressing your emotions, then, but in that moment, I mean, you can experience all kinds of feelings. And one of the things that I often refer to is an emotion chart, a feeling chart, because, in that situation with somebody like an offender bender, genuine anger is probably an emotion you can feel. But so many times people have such a limited vocabulary when it comes to their emotions. And, I think Tony Robbins has spoken a lot about this, Martini, and a lot of people now speak about it. And it's like, if you have an emotion chart, and if you out there, you can Google a feeling chart and an emotion chart. And basically, there's a lot of other emotions that could be, you may not be angry. You may just be annoyed. You may be irritated.
The levels.
They're levels. And if you understand their levels, you can scale yourself, and then you can go, okay, so I don't have to have this big reaction. I'm working myself up to this big reaction, and you don't have to state it. And listen, I sometimes have flash emotions where I get intensely irritated, and I in that moment react, and my husband, the sage, then reminds me, ooh, you should practice what you preach. And I go, I know, I'm aware in this moment that, and it's growing that awareness. But we're all human, but it's not staying there.
Yeah. It's proactively managing. If we're, and I love that you brought up this the feelings chart, right? Because that is the case, that we often, if we don't know what it is, then if we can't name it, if we don't have a word for it, then we don't know where to sort it in. As there's supposedly, I don't know who it is, I think it's Alaska or somewhere, Greenland, I don't know, somewhere, but they don't have they don't have the word blue. They don't have the word blue because they're in their life, in their environment, that color doesn't show up. So they do not have the word blue, right? I would be totally lost without the color blue, I love that. And just think of all the songs that wouldn't be around if we didn't have the word blue. Right?
I mean, it's the whole genre would be gone, the blues.
Yeah, exactly, a whole genre. But if we don't have the words for it, then there's nothing we can do about it because we don't know.
No, exactly. And we're limited. We become limited, yeah.
So if we can give ourselves, and we call this psychoeducation, if we give ourselves the education into our own inner living, own inner life, that what's going on internally, then we are empowering ourselves to be more proactive in the life that we are living. And our life isn't happening to us, rather we are in the driver's seat. And that is what is a lot of people suffer from. That's where this feeling of victimhood comes from, in my opinion. It's like, my boss tells me I have to do this or I have to do that. If you're not the type person who can be at work at 7 o'clock in the morning, then maybe you should look for a job that doesn't ask you to do that. Or maybe you should change your lifestyle so that you're awake at 7 o'clock, and you can be awake and be able to at 7 o'clock. It's an attitude thing as well. It's what attitude are you taking to the circumstances around you, and which brings us back to the self-awareness part. That if I know something is going to bother me, if I know something's going to trigger me, if I know something is going to make me happy, I think that's also, the more I think about it, it's also the reason why we look for solutions in external things like drugs, alcohol, addictions to gambling, sex, whatever, you name it, that people have these, they're searching for something that they're not finding inside themselves. And that is where self-awareness can help us to become the person we are actually meant to be. And that means, love ourselves first, fill our cup first, so that we can't help someone. We can't be a contributing member of society if we're not resting in ourselves. If our cup isn't full, we don't have anything left to give to someone else. And I think that's where self-awareness has a big part, plays a big part. That brings up another thought that when I was looking this up, and it's like, the more experience and the more power you have, for example, the more you are inclined to not pay attention to self-awareness. What do you think of that sentence?
The more experience, the more power you have. Well, I would, that's a tricky one. I would think it depends on the person, because somebody can be empowered in a position and have experience and choose to also be the Dalai Lama, you could say he has power because he has influence and he has a lot of experience, but I would say that he also has self-awareness.
That's probably the exception. There aren't a lot of Dalai Lamas.
Well, are we judging?
Yeah.
You know what I just wanted to go back on what you were saying. It keeps coming up for me this week, something you were talking about last week, and we sort of skimmed over it, I thought. And that really forms a part of self-awareness. You were talking about the PQ reps you do, because you love meditation. I'm not a fan. It's just, I do other ways to quiet my mind, but I also like the PQs. And for people who fall more on my side of the the fence and it's like, well, looking for alternatives to meditation because maybe it's one step too far. You can get the neurological benefits from PQs. PQs would be just, I mean, John Kabat-Zinn talks about coming to your senses. And PQs are just like taking a moment. It's an alternative to a body scan. And what you're doing is you're either focusing on the sensation of rubbing two fingers together, or you further sound, but you're interrupting automatic negative thoughts and taking control back of, and let me paraphrase in positive intelligence, the default mode your brain might be going into. So you as my understanding is you take it to task related mode. So the task at hand is you're focusing on your finger. So you're stopping an automatic reaction. And I think the whole thing with self-awareness, this way we spoke about stop earlier, is if you connect the dots, it's like if you have the awareness to stop because you're unraveling a bit, or you're not having the best moment, and you can recognize those moments, which is self-awareness, and then you can take the time out to do some PQ. Or if you could recognize activities. I mean, I'm a coach, and I'm going to keep on saying it. I love tools, or maybe that's because I'm a guy as well. Guys like tools. Somebody said to me the other day, they should call me the app person, because I like apps and AI and stuff like that too. But the fact is, if you could recognize whether it's music, whether it's nature, whether it's time out with playing with your puppy, your dog, or having a good conversation with somebody that inspires you, or listening to an audiobook, whatever the tool is that you need to become more present again, more self-aware, and tune into yourself, into your better self, any of those tools are relevant, because the main component is that you've had the self-awareness to go there and choose to go there and not spiral out of control and resort to taking drugs or taking it out on your or on somebody else. I mean, the worst case scenario is domestic abuse. Not being able to control, have the self-awareness at work, and not be able to control your emotions, and get home and beat up on your family. I mean, personally, I can't think of, I've been there, I've been a victim of that, but this was from people who didn't have any self-awareness, didn't choose to. Because the other trick here is it takes work and effort and the choice. We all have the choice to do the work.
I agree with you. We have the choice, but we first have to know we have a choice. And a lot of people don't have that option. There are families that where it hasn't been taught to them that they have an option, where it's not ingrained in their family culture to learn more. And
it's
they
not
react.
ingrained in their family culture, or it's the cultural thing where I'm curious with this. I mean, do you think that self-development is then cultural? Because from our experience, I mean, we speak to coaches from all over the world on a weekly basis, and I think self-development penetrates cultures. But yeah, you see, I'm like, I'm always solution focused, and my brain, you see, I'm being self-aware, but I'm not, but in the present moment, for your response has triggered me into going, no, there must be a solution to it. There must be a way. It can't be that you can't have a choice, or you don't realize you have a choice. And that just makes me sad.
Yeah. There are people, there are cultures. I mean, look at what is happening in some countries where, military regimes are not allowing women, for example, to go to school. Or There, there are restrictions. There are restrictions on what people can learn. You can only learn this religion and you can't learn anything else. Or also, that's one of the saddest things that I think that is happening is when a belief is not allowed to be questioned. So be that a religious belief or a family
political
belief, Yeah, but I mean, there are things like that in families, right? You do not question your father. When your father tells you the sun is green, the sun is green. End of story. That's what it is, and you do not, and that sentence alone brings up the thought of intimidation to me, because you're not allowed to develop. You're not allowed to question things, ask about things, find out the meaning for something. And if you don't have an inquisitive mind and you say, okay, sure, if that's what it is, that's what it is, and then
I think it's also what you were referring. You see, I've now clicked what you were referring to earlier, or my interpretation. I'm seeing the light there. And, you refer to power. And I think I would go along. I would hope there is a cure. But I would go along with the fact that if you live in a society which is very patriarchal, very male dominant, and you get a lot of toxic masculinity. I mean, if you have all that, then unfortunately, unless they develop, something changes, and some growth takes place, some emotional intelligence. What incentive do people like that have? But I want to also just say, I'm not the type to brush everybody with the same brush, paint everybody with the same brush. I always have hope. Which happens to be one of my strong values, hope.
Very good. That's to recognize values is another key element of self-awareness. And I think we don't, I know for me, from my side, I'm not actually aware of all of my values. I couldn't put it into writing or into words. I know when something goes against my values. I used to have the largest philosophical discussions about this with fellow coaches. And I would say, it polarizes me, the conversation about values, because I think that should be, and then at the other end of the scale is the opposite. And that's when I realized that is what is triggering the discussion, is because a value is not being valued. I'm not getting the attention, or it is not getting the focus that it should be getting. But I wanted to go somewhere else about this power and experience, right? This is actually in people that are leaders or that have a role as a leader. So that can be the head of the family, a father. It can be a boss in a company, or it can be the manager who has, 5, 10, 15, 20 people underneath them, right? They start getting self-complacent, is what this study found. This is what I read in that Harvard Business Review article, is that people in leadership positions often are not as self-aware as they were when they were a couple of layers below, because this has worked for me, so this is going to always work for me. And somewhere along the line, they stop recognizing how their external self-awareness is. They don't recognize when they're hurting someone's feelings, or that what they said is coming across as too brusque or too harsh, or on the other side of it, their experience tells them, I know the answer, and they don't catch that someone else might also have an answer that might be just as suitable, if not more suitable, or something. So self-awareness is, we can fall into traps. Let's put it this way. That's what I'm probably trying to get at, is we can fall into traps where we think we're self-aware, but we're not.
Yeah, but so much leadership training will tell you, you don't have bad teams, you have bad leaders. I'm just thinking of one. I don't know where it was a SEAL. It was SEAL training. I don't know. I'm just trying to think about the author, but he was saying that, two teams of SEALs doing training, and the one team kept on losing, and the leader said, "Yeah, well, if I had the other team, I'd also win." So he was blaming his team, and then the team leaders, or whoever led the operation, they swapped the team leaders around, and suddenly the team that was losing started winning. And this is the thing: companies and in corporates, if you don't realize the danger of toxic managers, um, there's something I was reading the other day, how in this team was performing really well, changed ownership of the company, and he couldn't understand why this team was turning up differently for him. They weren't performing as well, and he then learned that's because he would come to team meetings, leadership meetings in the company, and he would know all the answers and tell everybody what to do. So the team didn't feel the need to participate. So he had to carry all that, and he wasn't using the synergy of, in simple terms, you and I know how much quicker we work because we're collaborating. So when we're doing something together, and we call on your strengths or my strengths to perform and get certain tasks done and make decisions, because we're both doing it. So we're working as a team. Whereas if you take on all the responsibility and you don't look to your team to be able to, you must have, I'm carrying on, but there is a purpose to this. You must have respect or believe that your team is able to do the work you hire them to do. So if you don't, then you've made a mistake. Again, I remember Chris Croft always saying that, it starts with, it's management and leadership. The person who employed the person who's supposedly doing the bad job is the person who's made the mistake, so they're backstopped with them. So you always have to look at how people are turning up and why that is, and it backstops with you.
Yeah, it's it's that old saying, you manage things and you lead people, and that's what it comes down to. If you are, let's say you are the head of a department, or you're the manager of a department, then your job is to manage things, but to lead the people that are doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's just one of the elements of self-awareness where there's a self-awareness trap. And I think, I was thinking about where are some of the other elements of why would you want to be more self-aware? And it's not only to help you become a more effective leader in business or at work, but so that you can make better decisions in your life, that which has an impact on your relationships, which has an impact on how you communicate. It's all intertwined with one another. It's always something that is constantly one thing is being impacted by the other, which has an influence on the next thing, which has an impact on the other thing. If we have a bad day at work, then we might be cranky when we go home to our family, and which means that we are sharing negative vibes with them, which puts them in a negative situation, and maybe they had a bad day, so they're cranky to someone else as well. So it kind of it's a running never-ending case. And through self-awareness, that's one of the reasons why we want to become more self-aware, is so that we know this triggers me, or this makes me happy, or this makes me sad, this makes me angry. If you're aware of these things and you know how to treat that when you are aware of it, because you can't fix it if you don't know what's wrong. You want to, and to use the word fix is probably, something we don't like to say as coaches. We don't like to use that word fix, but we can influence how we show up, and we can influence how we communicate. And we do that by first becoming aware of what it is.
I'm also hearing you saying that self-awareness is key to a better life.
Absolutely. Yes, totally. I think it's the key to a better life. I mean, everything else that we as coaches do it always starts with something about self-awareness, becoming aware of our values, becoming aware of our beliefs, becoming aware of our inability to communicate, an ability to express our emotions. So how to reflect on things that are important to us. Those are all parts of self-awareness. So self-awareness is actually, for me, at the heart of coaching. It's the absolute basic part of coaching, is to foster self-awareness. And the more self-aware we become, and that's where I come up with my onion analogy, right? We're peeling away the layers of the onion that's keeping us from being our true, authentic selves.
It's very true what you say, because at the end of the day, what do we coach as coaches if we're dealing with people that are not self-aware?
Yeah.
So it's the key to creating the self-awareness. And just if you're watching this and you're like, okay, where do I go? Because I know in the beginning, if you look at values, I mean, I created a list of pages long with values on them. And that can just be daunting, because what do you start if you value so many things? There's a company called the VIA Institute, VIA, and they do it. If you Google VIA character strengths test, it's a great starting point. It's a free test, and you can basically learn about the values that you hold. For me, my top 5 values is love, hope, perspective, honesty, and love of learning. And number 6 is gratitude. So it tells me a bit about myself, and it helps me understand where I'm coming from. And in positive intelligence, Shazad Shamin, the course we keep referring to, they have a test. If you go to positiveintelligence.com and you look up the test, it's a great way to understand what saboteurs show up in your life. And then it gives you a great starting point. You can buy his book. You can look up research on its site. And there's a lot out on it. But it's a great way to learn where are you so judgy that it shows up as a saboteur in your life, and where you should bring in your sage, which is basically, my understanding, it's just a part of your higher self, so that you can be more self-aware, and you can be more responsive and less reactive in the situation, and you're willing to look at things through different eyes.
To pick up for anyone who's watching or listening to this, the positive intelligence, the biggest saboteur is always what we call the judge. And because you are always judging, your mind is always making connections of it. That's what the brain does. That's what it's there for. It was there, it's here to protect us, the brain is, and it still goes back to these ancient old history of what the brain was there for, was to protect us from saber-toothed tigers and whatever else nature had in store for us, as at the bottom of the food chain. But we don't need that anymore, but we still do. So our brain makes it easy on itself and says, oh, that's good, that's not good, that's a bad thing, that's a good thing. But who's judging? Right? Who's judging? Who says that, someone that's never seen a car before is going to think a car is something horrible? They're judging, right? Someone who has no fear of snakes, which is definitely not me, but they would say, oh, that's a pretty snake. And I would say, oh my God, I'm going to have nightmares for the next 3 years. So that's where this judging comes in. And then the judge always has an accomplice. And that accomplice is how he is evaluating what that part of the judge is, right? So I see myself, boss snaps at you, Someone with high self-awareness would say, he's had a bad day. I'll just, take it easy here and I'll play, low key this morning until the boss gets in a better mood. Someone that is a judging person who has an accomplice as a victim says, oh my God, the judge, he hates me. I'm the worst person on the planet. I must have done something wrong. It wasn't me. I wasn't the one who did that. So you're having this internal dialogue all this time. And it's self-awareness. It's, if you turn on your self-awareness, you think, okay, don't want to talk to that person right now. I'm going to go do my job. I'm going to do my work. I'm good. So that's where self-awareness can help us actually to have way better, more fulfilled lives. Absolutely.
I mean, we end up, and I just want to say, if you do this work, you're still going to have moments where you're triggered.
Yeah.
And it's I think the strength, for me, of this work comes in knowing that you've been triggered, and, knowing that, like you said, just walk away. Sometimes it's best to walk away and come back and deal with the situation with your sage, rather than your judge or an accomplice saboteur turning up, because you're going to end up paying a different price for that. Like, you're going to end up with karma.
Yeah.
You not feedback, but karma. So you're going to have to deal with a whole different level of stuff. So this is where the work really, really helps. Maybe I think we've reached our
time.
If you've made it this far, congratulations.
Yes, very good. I just wanted to add a note. I'm putting in a link to a self-awareness test you can do. It's putting that into the chat. And Paul mentioned a couple of things. We'll probably add those to the chat after this conversation, after we go. So thank you all. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Debbie. Much appreciated. And you're much appreciated.
Thank you very much. And we look forward to your comments, folks. Let us know. All right. So here we go.